Have you ever wondered what could possibly motivate someone to run towards an oncoming train? Stay tuned, because we have a story about a man who tried to save his luxury SUV and ended up losing everything. This collection of stories serves as a stark reminder of what not to do, and a powerful lesson that the laws of physics are not suggestions. But before we begin, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on more proof that evolution is always at work. Now get ready, because this list is packed with tales that will redefine your understanding of poor judgment. 1. Heroism without knowledge is a recipe for tragedy. In July 2014, in a small Eastern European village, a routine task on a hog farm turned into a multi-fatality disaster. A driver arrived to empty a cesspool. While working, he was overcome by toxic hydrogen sulfide fumes, lost consciousness, and fell into the septic tank. Seeing him fall, a co-worker rushed to help, only to be overcome by the same invisible gas and fallen himself. A third person, seeing two people in distress, tried to rescue them and became the third victim. This horrifying domino effect of good intentions and fatal ignorance repeated itself 4 more times. In a matter of minutes, 7 people, each trying to save the one before, died in the cesspool, a shocking loss for the tiny community. An 8th person who rushed to help was only saved by the timely arrival of properly equipped emergency workers. It's a sobering lesson that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is rush in to help without understanding the real danger. 2. In August 1999, a man named Ian, a fitness fanatic and a professional electrician, inadvertently created a death trap in his own home. He had converted a room into a gym, hanging a punching bag from the ceiling with a metal chain. After a Saturday night out with his cousin, he returned home to show off his new setup. He switched on the lights and, with casual confidence, threw a punch at the bag, his hand glancing off the side and making contact with the electrified metal chain at the top. He was electrocuted instantly. The investigation revealed a fatal wiring flaw. The metal chain holding the bag was making contact with a live electrical circuit he had recently installed. A catastrophic mistake for a professional electrician, likely made due to fatigue or impaired judgment. His 2 greatest passions, fitness and electricity, had collided in the most ironic way possible. 3. The rocket car. Our next story is a legend in the annals of poor judgment, a tale of one man's quest to defy the limits of speed using military-grade hardware. In the Arizona desert, a man decided his classic Impala wasn't fast enough. His solution? To strap a JATO unit, a jet-assisted takeoff rocket designed to help heavy military planes get airborne, to the roof of his car. After securing the rocket, he drove out to a long, straight stretch of road, accelerated to a high speed, and then hit the ignition button. The rocket fired, unleashing a force of nature that pinned him to his seat and turned his car into a horizontal missile. He was traveling at over 300 miles per hour when he realized he could no longer brake or steer. The car remained on the road for a few miles before becoming airborne, eventually slamming into a cliff face 125 feet up. The impact left behind little more than a blackened crater and a legend about the man who, for a few brief moments, was likely the fastest driver on Earth. 4. Some materials have their limits, a lesson one Oregon fisherman learned the hard way in April 2000. His 12-foot aluminum boat was in rough shape, held together in multiple places, including the critical motor mount, with duct tape. The boat was already overloaded, carrying more than triple its recommended weight. When they hit rough water, the man made a fatal mistake. He stood up. The unstable, overloaded, duct-taped vessel immediately capsized. To make matters worse, his ill-fitting life jacket was nearly useless. While his friend was rescued, our protagonist learned a final fatal lesson. Even duct tape can't fix bad judgment. 5. They say you shouldn't bite the hand that feeds you. A similar logic applies to safety equipment. You probably shouldn't destroy the very thing designed to save your life. In February 2008, at a bustling European ski resort, a young British tourist named Leo and his friends, fueled by alcohol, had a brilliant idea. They noticed the large, padded safety barriers at the bottom of a ski slope. Their plan? To steal the protective padding and use it as makeshift sleds. They tore the foam from the barriers and climbed the slope for a joyride. The fatal flaw in their plan became apparent moments later. With no way to steer or stop, Leo hurtled down the icy slope directly toward the very same metal barriers he had just stripped of their protection. The impact was catastrophic. He was killed instantly by the exposed metal pole, turning a tool of safety into the instrument of his demise. A masterclass in turning a solution into a problem. 6. Pop quiz. If you encounter a river that locals say is teeming with crocodiles, do you A, take a picture from a safe distance, or B, go for a swim? For a 27-year-old woman in South Africa on New Year's Day 2010, the answer was B. Despite clear warnings and posted signs, she decided to take a dip in the infamous Elephant's River. Incredibly, she swam once and emerged unharmed. Bolstered by this success, she went in for a second swim, again returning safely. They say third time's the charm, but in her case, her luck ran out. On her third swim, her friends watched in horror as she simply disappeared beneath the surface. There was no struggle, no scream, just a ripple on the water where she had been moments before. Her body was never recovered, a grim testament to the fact that when you play Russian roulette with nature, the house eventually wins. 7. Outsmarting the police is difficult. It's even harder when your escape plan is a sequence of 4 terrible ideas. In March 2007, a 20-year-old named Anthony was pulled over for speeding in a stolen car. While the police had their backs turned, he managed to move his handcuffed hands to his front, wiggle through the partition in the patrol car, and then drive off in it. He led police on a 90 mph chase, forcing other cars off the road. Police laid down spike strips, but even with flat tires, he kept going. Just before he reached the next town, a state trooper performed a maneuver to spin the stolen car. Due to the flat tires and erratic driving, the car rolled. Anthony's final mistake: he wasn't wearing his seatbelt. He was thrown from the vehicle and died a week later. 8. The last dive. Experience is no substitute for following procedure, a lesson learned too late by Mitchell "Sharky" Ether, a head diver at an Australian pearl farm. Sharky was known as a cowboy, a risk-taker who cut corners to get the job done. His colleagues always said he was destined for an original exit. The warning signs were clear. During one incident, he ran low on fuel for the air compressor. Instead of bringing the other divers up, he surfaced alone and tried to refuel the running machine on an unsteady deck. He spilled petrol on the hot exhaust, causing an explosion that destroyed their new $200,000 boat. Incredibly, he survived and was promoted. But old habits die hard. His final mistake came when a mooring rope got tangled in the boat's propeller. Instead of asking another diver for help, Sharky threw on his gear, started the compressor, and jumped in. In his haste, he made a fatal error. He forgot to take the boat out of gear. Once he freed the rope, the spinning propeller grabbed his air hose. His source of life became the instrument of his demise, reeling him in like a fish and pulling him directly through the blades. 9. A poor choice of sleeping location can be just as dangerous as any active risk. In March 2000, a woman and her boyfriend, after an evening of drinking, decided the roof of their hotel would make a fine bedroom. They climbed over a guardrail with pillows and blankets and settled in for the night. Deep in an intoxicated sleep, the woman shifted, slid off the edge of the roof, and fell to her death on the street below. When police arrived, her boyfriend was still fast asleep on the roof, completely unaware of the tragedy. A grim reminder that when your judgment is impaired, walls and railings are not optional. 10. What is a single cigarette worth? For one 43-year-old woman traveling on a bus from Glasgow to London, it was apparently worth everything. Stuck on a 12-hour journey with a strict no-smoking policy, her desperation for nicotine grew with every passing mile. When the bus made a scheduled stop but passengers were not allowed to disembark, her frustration reached a boiling point. She began shouting, demanding to be let off. The problem? They were on a major motorway where stopping is forbidden except in emergencies. In a moment of sheer nicotine-fueled desperation, she forced open the emergency door while the coach was traveling at approximately 60 miles per hour. The laws of physics did the rest. She was pulled from the vehicle and fell under its wheels. The coach did make an emergency stop then, but tragically, she never got that last cigarette. 11. There are old pilots, and there are bold pilots, but there are no old, bold pilots. In October 2017, two experienced military pilots were flying home from a naval event that ironically included low-altitude awareness training. Instead of applying these lessons, they decided to engage in some flat-hatting, flying dangerously low and fast. The instructing pilot, age 31, and his student, age 25, took turns swooping their training jet as low as 200 feet off the ground, well below the 500-foot safety regulation. The instructor then demonstrated a terrain-following maneuver, but left the aircraft too low and too slow. He returned control to his student, but it was too late. The jet stalled over the rising terrain, and they were unable to eject safely. Both men died, a tragic result of an aggressive culture that sometimes values daring over discipline. 12. The Pillar of Destruction. This countdown begins with a tragedy that unfolded in plain sight, a slow-motion catastrophe with a live audience. In Johannesburg, South Africa, on October 9, 2008, office workers across the street from a construction site became unwitting spectators to a man's methodical self-destruction. The man, 52-year-old Ishmael, was operating a mini excavator. His mission? To demolish a building. His technique? To chip away day after day at a single concrete pillar. This wasn't just any pillar, but the primary support holding up the massive concrete slab directly over his own head. With the surrounding walls already gone, these pillars were the only thing standing between him and oblivion. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a multi-day crusade against the fundamental laws of physics. Each swing of the excavator was a step closer to the inevitable. The outcome was as predictable as it was final. The pillar eventually gave way, and the concrete slab collapsed, crushing Ishmael and his machine instantly. He died in the driver's seat, having just completed what one horrified observer called the most senseless demolition imaginable. 13. Sometimes, academic intelligence provides no defense against poor decision-making. On New Year's Day 2000, a 38-year-old doctoral student in Canada decided to celebrate with a polar bear swim. His plan was to swim between two holes cut in the ice of a frozen lake, a distance of only about 6 feet. He failed to consider the primary danger of swimming under ice: disorientation. Once beneath the frozen surface, in the dark and frigid water, it becomes nearly impossible to find the exit. He dove into one hole and never resurfaced, a tragic demonstration that a PhD in forestry doesn't grant immunity from the laws of hypothermia. 14. They say faith can move mountains. Unfortunately, as one pastor in Gabon discovered in 2006, it does not suspend the laws of buoyancy. During a fervent sermon, the 35-year-old preacher declared that with enough faith, a person could walk on water, just like in the Bible. Whether swept up in his own rhetoric or feeling pressured to prove his point, he decided to give a demonstration. He announced he would walk across a wide estuary that normally required a 20-minute ferry ride to cross. There was just one problem. The pastor couldn't swim. Confident in his divine protection, he waded into the water as his congregation watched. The miracle did not occur. He quickly sank beneath the waves and drowned, a grim testament to the fact that physics remains undefeated. 15. Modern cars are packed with technology, but no amount of all-wheel drive can overcome the raw power of nature. In January 2005, during a massive thunderstorm in South Africa, a 33-year-old woman named Barbara approached a flooded bridge in her luxury SUV. Police were stationed at the bridge, warning all drivers not to cross. Confident in her vehicle's advanced X-Drive system, Barbara laughed off their advice. She likely imagined telling her friends how her superior machine conquered the floodwaters while lesser cars turned back. The distinction between virtually unlimited traction and actually unlimited became tragically clear the moment she drove onto the bridge. The powerful current immediately swept her SUV off the road, carrying it away like a toy. Her body was found later, still inside the vehicle, over a mile downstream. A reminder that Mother Nature doesn't read marketing brochures. 16. Hollywood makes jumping a drawbridge look easy. Reality, however, is a harsh critic. In May 2019, two men in their late 20s were driving in Louisiana when they encountered the Black Bayou drawbridge in its fully raised position. For them, the lowered safety gates and open gap weren't a stop sign. They were an invitation. In a scene straight out of an action movie fantasy, they floored their sedan, attempting to launch it across the chasm. But cars, unlike in the movies, are not designed for flight. A witness watched as the vehicle hit the ramp, went airborne for a brief, hopeful moment, and then plunged directly into the dark water below. Police divers later recovered the car with both men inside, their cinematic ambitions drowned by the simple, unforgiving laws of physics. As one state trooper Riley noted, "You can't survive for long when the road has a higher IQ than you do." 17. They say the journey is more important than the destination, but for one man in July 2005, both were fatal. A 35-year-old named Robert was trying to reach a nudist campground in a remote part of Death Valley. His van got stuck deep in the treacherous salt flats. After 6 days of waiting for help, he was miraculously found by a group of young rescue trainees and taken to safety. You'd think he'd have learned his lesson. He didn't. Determined to get back to his van, he hitched another ride into the valley, this time being dropped off 15 miles from his vehicle. His plan was to walk the rest of the way. He set off without a map, a GPS, or even water. His body was found 3 days later. The desert had claimed another victim, proving that Death Valley rarely gives a second chance to those who disrespect its power. 18. Bridge too far. If our first story was about a slow dance with gravity, this one is about someone who thought action movie physics applied in the real world. On January 13, 2008, a 37-year-old man in Florida decided to test his mettle against a drawbridge. Dressed only in swim trunks and sneakers, because safety gear is for those who lack confidence, he aimed his Suzuki motorcycle at the opening Mananasoda Key drawbridge. A rational person sees a rising bridge and waits. Our protagonist saw a ramp and a challenge. He was determined to jump the gap, a modern-day Evel Knievel fueled by poor judgment. The bridge designers, however, were smarter. They had installed crossing guards specifically to stop this kind of stunt. But for our rider, safety barriers were just part of the obstacle course. As he sped towards his glorious leap, the descending safety gate did its job perfectly. In a fatal, almost comedic moment, the crossing arm swept him cleanly off his bike and over the side of the bridge, sending him into the water below and out of the gene pool. The final irony? His motorcycle, now riderless, continued its trajectory, flew over the gap, and landed safely on the other side. The bike made the jump its rider couldn't. 19. Teamwork in petty crime is a delicate art. And on an August evening in a quiet Ohio suburb, that art fell apart spectacularly. The plan was simple. 4 young men would lean out of their beat-up minivan, launching stones at mailboxes and cars. But for 21-year-old Kevin, this wasn't enough. He felt limited by the car window. He craved a grander gesture, a wider arc for his vandalism. His solution? While the van was moving, he slid open the large side door to get better leverage. With the wind rushing past, he reached back for a large rock, wound up for his masterpiece throw, and unleashed it. The laws of motion, which he had so casually ignored, took over. His powerful swing created a pendulum effect, with his own body as the weight. He was flung from the moving vehicle, his act of minor vandalism ending in a fatal impact with the pavement. His friends, their appetite for destruction suddenly gone, could only call for help that would never arrive in time. A tragic lesson in momentum and the perils of showing off. 20. Experience is no guarantee of good judgment. In April 2000, a tire mechanic with years of experience was repairing a crack in a large tractor-trailer wheel rim. The job required welding, but he neglected a critical first step, deflating the massive tire. Despite warnings from his manager and a customer, he applied the heat. As any high school chemistry student could predict, the air inside the sealed container expanded until the tire exploded catastrophically. The 4-foot diameter rim shot off the axle, striking the mechanic in the head and killing him instantly. A fatal reminder that the basic laws of physics apply to everyone, regardless of experience. 21. Even a harmless snowball fight can turn deadly when you ignore the basic rules of physics. In March, in Delaware, two toll collectors were breaking up the monotony of their shift with a friendly snowball fight. One of them saw what he thought was a perfect, untouched patch of snow on the roof of a passing tractor trailer. He reached out to scoop up some ammunition for their game. It was a split-second decision that went horribly wrong. Instead of just grabbing snow, his hand got caught on the moving truck. In an instant, what was a moment of innocent fun turned into a fatal mistake. The powerful vehicle pulled him from his booth and dragged him along the highway. A tragic reminder that the line between a prank and a disaster can be incredibly thin. 22. Sometimes the consequences of a bad decision aren't fatal, but they are permanent. In November 2007, a man named Edward broke into the apartment of a handicapped man. The robbery was going smoothly until the victim woke up. "I couldn't believe my eyes," the victim recalled. "He attacked me with his fists. I had no choice." The handicapped man, who was evidently not defenseless, grabbed his crutch and struck his attacker squarely between the legs. The burglar then leaped out the first-floor window. When the victim looked down, he saw something on the floor that had fallen out of the burglar's pants. He realized to his horror it was a testicle. Doctors were later forced to amputate the burglar's entire scrotum to prevent gangrene. From his hospital bed, the burglar filed a complaint declaring, "I will never forgive him." 23. Our next winner demonstrates a profound misunderstanding of biology. In 2008, a man named Darwin, known even to his friends as being reckless, had a brilliant idea. He saw a bag of bird seed labeled 100% poppy seed and concluded it must be 100% opium. He bought the bag, boiled the seeds into a thick, black paste, and injected the concoction into his veins. When nothing happened, he tried a second injection. He arrived at the hospital unconscious, with thousands of tiny seed-like objects scattered throughout his lungs. While he miraculously survived the initial organ failure and sepsis, he later died from a more conventional overdose. A stark reminder that just because something says poppy seed doesn't mean it's a DIY drug kit. 24. Let's begin with a reminder that some materials are slippery for a reason. In January 2008, two burglars in Sweden had just finished a successful raid on a local gymnasium. When a janitor spotted them, they fled into the darkness, making a split-second decision to escape down a 55-foot rock cliff. They overlooked three critical facts. It was pitch black, it had been raining, and the cliffs were made of granite, the same slick material used for kitchen countertops. Trying to descend wet, polished granite in the dark is a recipe for disaster. One of the burglars slipped and fell to his death, his stolen goods scattered around him. A grim lesson that some shortcuts lead directly to an early grave. 25. In July 2008, a 68-year-old man in Italy was waiting in his expensive Porsche SUV at a traffic light near a railroad crossing. Impatient and distracted, he stopped with his vehicle positioned directly on the tracks. At that moment, the crossing gates came down, trapping his luxury car in the path of an approaching train. After a few precious seconds, he realized his peril and wisely jumped out of the car. He was safe. But then, perhaps thinking of the repair bill, he made a fatal calculation. He turned and ran towards the oncoming train, waving his arms frantically as if he could stop it, trying to save his vehicle. The train, unable to stop, struck both the car and the man. He was thrown 30 meters and his injuries were too severe. In a tragic display of misplaced priorities, he lost his life trying to save a replaceable object. 26. Alcohol, aviation, and amateurs are a lethally bad combination. In 1996, in a quiet Canadian town, residents were woken by the sound of a small plane flying dangerously low over their houses. The pilots were two men who, after a long night of drinking, decided they knew enough to fly an aircraft, despite having no licenses or training. One of them worked at the local airport and had access. They broke into a small plane, managed to get it into the air, and spent a considerable amount of time buzzing around in the dark. Eventually, nature called, but in their intoxicated state, they couldn't find the airport. Disoriented, they tried to land on the grassy median of the Trans-Canada Highway. They might have even succeeded if it weren't for the power lines crossing the median. The plane's tail clipped the wires, sending it into a nosedive. Both men were killed instantly. 27. What's more terrifying than a lion? A tiger? How about their enormous hybrid offspring? In October 2008, a 32-year-old man named Peter was volunteering at an animal sanctuary in Oklahoma. He had a gift for connecting with animals, but one day, that gift failed him. The sanctuary was home to a liger, a massive hybrid of a lion and a tiger. The sanctuary manager had one golden rule: never, ever open the liger's gate. For reasons that will forever remain a mystery, Peter broke that rule. He entered the liger's cage during feeding time. Instead of delivering the meal, he became the meal. Though he managed to escape the enclosure, his injuries were too severe, and he died later that night. A tragic reminder that when there's a hungry predator on the other side of a gate, do not open is a rule, not a suggestion. 28. Exercise is healthy, but common sense is vital. In July 2007, a 24-year-old woman named Jessica was working out at a hotel gym in Mexico. She needed to get the attention of someone on the floor below. Instead of using the stairs or a phone, she devised a more direct method. She saw the open shaft of a large industrial service elevator and decided it was the perfect conduit for communication. She leaned her head into the empty shaft to shout downstairs. Perhaps the workout endorphins clouded her judgment, but she failed to notice a critical detail. The elevator car was moving up towards her. In the contest between a rising metal box and a human head, the elevator always wins. Her shortcut in communication led to a permanent and tragic conclusion, a brutal lesson in the unyielding laws of physics. 29. Our next story is about a man who literally froze his genetic contribution to humanity. In January 2000, police were looking for a missing truck driver and his load of broccoli. The stalled truck was found 4 days later. After thawing it out, mechanics found it had simply run out of gas. The driver's belongings were in the cab, but the driver was gone. A patrolman soon noticed something odd protruding from between the pallets of broccoli in the refrigerated trailer: a pair of human feet. The frozen body of the driver was found standing upside down, his head frozen to the floor. The coroner determined he had been trying to retrieve a stash of drugs hidden among the broccoli, fell, knocked himself unconscious, and succumbed to hypothermia. A chilling tale of poorly planned logistics. 30. Some recreational activities should remain purely theoretical. During a festival in Australia in November 2000, a man decided to road surf behind a slow-moving parade truck. Decked out in a large sombrero, with a beer in one hand and a rope tied to the truck in the other, he slid along the pavement on a piece of cardboard. He was having the time of his life until the rope got caught under the truck's wheels. He was pulled under the vehicle, becoming a human speed bump. The local newspaper immortalized the incident with a front-page photo of his body in a body bag, with his poignant sombrero placed beside it. A tragic end to a profoundly stupid idea. 31. After a long evening of drinking, two lifelong friends in their late 40s decided to recreate the legend of William Tell. Instead of an apple, they used an empty beer can. One man, Larry, placed the can on his head and urged his friend, Silas, to take the shot. Silas, his aim unsteady from the alcohol, pulled the trigger. He missed the can entirely, fatally wounding his best friend. A profoundly stupid end to a lifelong friendship, proving that some legends are best left as legends, especially when alcohol is involved in the reenactment. 32. Performance enhancement gone wrong. Our next tale moves from outdoor misadventures to a deeply personal and misguided indoor experiment. In 1988, doctors at a New York hospital documented a case so bizarre it served as a grim warning to the medical community. A 34-year-old man, seeking to improve his romantic life, devised a novel approach. He used an eyedropper to inject cocaine directly into his urinary tract. He believed this unorthodox method would provide a sexual high. Initially, his theory seemed to work, perhaps too well. He was left with a painful condition that lasted for 3 full days, making normal biological functions impossible. On the third day in the hospital, the problem seemingly resolved itself, bringing a wave of relief. But the relief was short-lived. Over the next 12 hours, the cocaine triggered massive blood clotting throughout his body. Tissue began dying everywhere: his feet, hands, genitals, back, and chest. He was rushed to the burn unit, where doctors fought to stop the spread of gangrene. They were forced to amputate both his legs above the knee and all but one of his fingers. His penis simply detached on its own. The man survived, left to contemplate his choices in a rehabilitation facility, a living testament to perhaps the most costly few minutes of pleasure in medical history. 33. The lure of quick cash can be powerful, but when that cash is in the form of copper wiring, the job comes with significant risks. In July 2011, a 16-year-old in the United Kingdom decided to get into the lucrative, yet perilous, business of copper theft. He wasn't deterred by the danger of death signs plastered all over electrical substations. To him, they were likely just obstacles meant to scare people away from the valuable metal. He approached an installation, tools in hand, ready to make a quick score. What he failed to appreciate was that those wires carry enough voltage to power thousands of homes. The moment his metal tools made contact with the live components, his brief and ill-advised criminal career came to an electrifying and instantaneous end. A stark reminder that some warning signs are not suggestions. They are statements of fact. 34. There are many risks in the world of theft, but being permanently trapped by your prize is perhaps the most ironic. In 1999, a 45-year-old man named Mark devised a plan to acquire some new tires from a local dealership in the dead of night. His operation was ambitious. He'd already stolen one truck from the lot to haul away the wheels he was stealing from other vehicles. After successfully liberating several sets of tires, he moved on to his next target. He slid a jack under another pickup, raised it, and began to work. But in his haste, he neglected to ensure the setup was stable. He was playing a high-stakes game of Jenga with a multi-ton truck. The truck shifted, the jack slipped, and the full weight of the vehicle came crashing down on his chest. He was found hours later by dealership employees arriving for work, a grim monument to a poorly executed crime, literally crushed by the weight of his own greed. 35. The pursuit of the perfect selfie claims another pair of victims. In March 2017, two young women were at a horse race held at a unique venue in Mexico, a track built adjacent to a small, rural airfield. After the races, they wanted a photo to remember the day. Looking for a high vantage point, they climbed onto the roof of a large van parked next to the runway. They were so consumed by framing the perfect shot, smiling, posing, checking the angles, that they became utterly deaf and blind to the world around them. They failed to notice a small aircraft making its final approach to land. The noise of the crowd masked the sound of the engine. The wing of the descending plane struck both women, killing them instantly. They had found the highest point in the area, but in doing so, had made themselves the highest point in the path of a landing aircraft. The deadliest blind spot is the one you create for yourself. 36. Who wants to ride the in-house water slide? One man challenged his friends in a Calgary apartment building in July 2000. This water slide was, in fact, the building's garbage chute. A 25-year-old named Sheldon, fueled by alcohol and bravado, accepted the dare. He climbed into the narrow metal tube and began his head-first 12-story descent. He beat the elevator down, but his ride didn't end in a soft pile of trash. He tumbled directly into the unforgiving steel trash compactor at the bottom. His evening of fun came to a swift, crushing, and entirely predictable end. 37. Timing is everything, especially when you're stealing from a live electrical system. In 2001, a thief in Scotland devised a clever plan to steal valuable copper cable from the railway. He knew the cable was only electrified when trains were passing by. His plan was to cut the cable in the gaps between trains. On paper, it was ingenious. The only problem? In his coat pocket, police later found an out-of-date train timetable. The train arrived 10 minutes earlier than he expected, sending a lethal jolt of electricity through his hacksaw and his body the moment it passed. His carefully planned heist was foiled not by security but by a simple failure to check the updated schedule, a fatal miscalculation that proves the devil is truly in the details. 38. Insurance fraud backfire. Our next spot is reserved for a rare double Darwin Award, proving that insurance fraud is a dangerous business. Musa and his son, Essa, owned a sandwich shop in Ohio. When business soured, they hatched a plan. Burn the place down and collect the insurance money. They hired an arsonist who proved to be stunningly incompetent, failing to destroy the shop on 3 separate occasions. After his third failure, a frustrated Musa gave a TV interview about the hate crimes, prophetically declaring, "This is my life and nobody's going to take that away from me." Fed up, Musa and his son decided to handle the job themselves. They spread gasoline all around the eatery. During a cigarette break to admire their work, one flick of a lighter ignited the gasoline fumes. The resulting explosion blew out an entire wall and engulfed both men in flames. They died from their injuries weeks later in the hospital, having finally succeeded where their hired help had failed. 39. Rabbit season. From urban stunts, we head to the snowy wilderness, where alcohol and horsepower prove to be a volatile cocktail. Imagine a winter party, friends, snowmobiles, and enough booze to make chasing a wild animal seem like a brilliant idea. After a day of drinking and racing, the group was heading home when a jackrabbit appeared. For a sober person, it's a fleeting glimpse of nature. For this inebriated crew, it was a call to action. The chase was on. Several riders joined in, weaving recklessly in pursuit of their furry quarry. Most eventually gave up as the chase became too dangerous, but one man was determined. He locked his eyes on the prize, pushing his snowmobile to its limits. The rabbit, possessing far superior survival instincts, darted toward a road. At the last second, it dove into a concrete culvert under the road. Our hunter, fixated on ramming the rabbit, never even hit the brakes. The front of the snowmobile plunged into the concrete tube, rupturing the front-mounted fuel tank and spilling gasoline over the red-hot engine. The resulting explosion launched the rider 20 feet and scattered debris across the snow. The rabbit's whereabouts remain unknown, though it's safe to assume it lived to hop another day. 40. Some DIY projects are best left to professionals, especially when they involve industrial-strength machinery. A homeowner decided to trim the top of a large oak tree himself, renting a powerful wood chipper capable of turning 8-inch branches into mulch. His plan seemed efficient. Position the running shredder at the base of the tree, climb up, cut branches, and drop them directly into the hopper below. The plan went awry when he stepped off his ladder, lost his balance, and fell. Paramedics found him deceased, halfway in and halfway out of the wood chipper's intake, one leg processed up to the hip. A horrifying lesson that some shortcuts don't just cost you time. They cost you everything. 41. Mole patrol gone wrong. Sometimes, a small nuisance can inspire a catastrophically oversized solution. On January 10, 2007, a 63-year-old German man at his holiday property was fed up. Moles were ruining his pristine lawn, and he decided to declare total war. Rather than using traps or calling an expert, he devised a plan of biblical proportions. He would electrocute the entire subterranean world. He began by pounding several long metal rods deep into the ground, all over his property. Then came the fateful step that separated him from sane homeowners. He didn't plug them into a wall socket. He tapped the rods directly into a high-voltage power line running overhead. His theory was terrifyingly sound. The electricity would make the ground uninhabitable for any burrowing creature. But he overlooked a critical detail. High-voltage electricity doesn't politely stay underground. By energizing the earth through the metal rods, he had effectively turned his entire lawn, including the ground he was standing on, into a giant execution device. He was found dead later, having learned too late that he was the primary target of his own creation. 42. Water and electricity have a shocking relationship, a fact our final winner learned the hard way. In August 1999, a man named Rodney was jet skiing on Lake Washington when his battery started to die. He pulled up to a dock, ran to his car to get a battery charger, and plugged it into a 110-volt outlet on the dock. Then, in a move that defied all common sense, he jumped back onto his jet ski, which was sitting in the water, while still holding the live booster cables. The result was instantaneous. Electricity, seeking the path of least resistance, surged through his body, using him as a perfect conductor to the water around him. He was electrocuted immediately. It was a beautiful day for a ride on the lake, but a terrible day for a lesson in basic electrical safety. 43. Our final bonus story comes from February 2000, when a man in Pennsylvania was clearing timber from his property. As an amateur lumberjack, he was focused entirely on the tree he was cutting, but failed to notice several other dead trees leaning against his target. When he made the final cut, the combined weight sent the tree falling in an unexpected direction. He tried to run, but slipped on the icy snow and fell directly into the path of the massive descending trunk. A final crushing reminder that when dealing with the forces of nature, awareness of your entire surroundings is not just a good idea. It's what keeps you alive. 44. Barn burner. Group projects can be a recipe for disaster, especially when no one in the group has any common sense. On January 14, 2007, 3 friends in West Virginia decided to demolish an old barn. Armed with power tools and misguided enthusiasm, the trio set to work. Things went smoothly until one of the men fired up his chainsaw, determined to speed up the process. With the confidence of someone who has never studied basic engineering, he targeted what he thought was just another piece of wood. He ripped through the timber with ease, unfortunately severing one of the last remaining support posts, holding up the entire weight of the barn roof. Physics, which had been patiently waiting, took over. The roof immediately began its descent. The chainsaw operator had a few brief, horrifying moments to contemplate the literal weight of his mistake as tons of lumber came crashing down. He succeeded in demolishing the barn, though not quite in the way he had planned. 45. Cart before the horse. The internet is a treasure trove of bad ideas, and on March 8, 2008, 18-year-old Cameron from Florida decided to bring one to life. The viral concept was simple: ride in a shopping cart while holding on to a moving SUV. As one witness later noted, it was deeply irresponsible but entirely predictable behavior for a teenager convinced of his own immortality. For a few glorious moments, Cameron was the king of the parking lot, a discount chariot racer holding onto the back of the SUV. He likely felt invincible, mastering his wheeled domain. But physics has a way of asserting itself, usually at the worst possible moment. When the SUV encountered a speed bump, a device specifically designed to discourage high speeds, Cameron's makeshift ride came to an abrupt halt. The shopping cart overturned violently, ejecting its passenger onto the pavement. Cameron, who had wisely forgone the cart's toddler safety belt, was pronounced dead at the scene, ending his brief and reckless experiment in alternative transportation. 46. If riding double on a 50cc scooter is illegal in Japan, 3 15-year-old boys must have thought riding triple was perfectly fine. In June 2000, the trio squeezed onto a single tiny scooter, a vehicle designed for one person. None of them had a license and none of them wore a helmet. Their precarious balancing act ended when they swerved into the path of a car. 2 of the boys were thrown directly into oncoming traffic. All 3 suffered severe injuries and were pronounced dead at the scene. A tragic lesson that safety laws aren't arbitrary rules. They are written in the ink of past tragedies. 47. The modern obsession with social media has created a new category of risk: the desire for a viral moment outweighing the instinct for self-preservation. In May 2018, a 30-year-old man driving on a rural backroad pulled over. He spotted what he thought was an injured bear lying nearby. A compassionate person might call for help. A cautious person would stay away. This man saw a photo opportunity. Ignoring the pleas of his passengers, who began filming the encounter, he approached the bear, phone in hand, ready to capture an epic selfie. He got close, framing the shot, believing the animal was too weak to be a threat. He was wrong. The bear, not nearly as injured as it appeared, sprang with surprising force. The encounter was swift and final, a tragic reminder that no amount of likes or shares is worth your life, especially when your subject has claws and teeth. 48. On January 1, 2000, a 26-year-old Stanford graduate decided the best way to ring in the new millennium was from atop a streetlight in Las Vegas. Minutes before midnight, he climbed the pole and waved to the cheering crowds below. As the clock struck 12, he lost his footing. In a desperate attempt to break his fall, he grabbed the nearest thing he could, the high-voltage wires powering the light. He was suddenly conducting more than just a crowd's enthusiasm. Medical examiners were unsure if the electrocution or the 30-foot fall to the concrete killed him, but either way, he earned the distinction of being the first Darwin Award recipient of the 21st century. 49. Our top spot goes to a man whose final moments were not just untimely, but exceedingly unpleasant. In October 1999, a 23-year-old man in Maine was driving his pickup truck far too fast to navigate a sharp turn. His momentum carried him through two fences and directly into a 400,000-gallon tank of raw sewage at the local wastewater treatment plant. Divers later located his body and his truck at the bottom of the 16-foot-deep tank. The autopsy couldn't provide a conclusive cause of death, but it's safe to say it was a crappy way to go. A grim reminder to slow down, especially when driving near large vats of anything. And there you have it. 49 tales of poor decision-making that prove natural selection never takes a day off. We present these stories not for entertainment alone, but as a serious warning. The actions depicted here had fatal consequences and should never be imitated. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next look at evolution in action. Until next time, stay smart, stay safe, and remember, Darwin is always watching.